Shields calls out Marshall. Before I get into that, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. That way you get updated when I drop the newest content like this. With that being said, let's get into the video. So Shields gives this long interview, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing that was mentioned, but it all comes down to this. She goes on to say that the only reason why they're trying to build Savannah Marshall is because of how great she is. That's it. If Shields wasn't as great as she was, Savannah Marshall would be a nobody, is what she's pretty much trying to say. And I kind of tend to disagree with that, although you have to admit that Shields' name does bring relevance to Savannah Marshall. But I can't just base it off of Shields' quote-unquote greatness. The fact is, Shields is undefeated in the pros. She only had one loss in the amateurs. That is why Savannah Marshall's name is being mentioned, because she is the only person to beat Shields. So therefore, when you have the only person to beat you in the amateurs turn pro, of course, people are going to mention them, especially if you're undefeated. So yes, your greatness has a part to do with it, but at the same time, you can't discredit the other fighter's greatness, who is undefeated, going into a defense of a title at your rightful weight class that you went down from. So I want to see this fight. I think this would be a great fight. If Shields is really going to call herself the GOAT, then this is the type of fight that I feel like she needs, because it proves that, yeah, you might have beat me in the amateurs, but we're on the professional stage now. This is different. This is my home. This is where I shine. This is where I am the greatest. So again, it would just be another feather in her cap to beat the only girl to ever beat her. It would show her dominance. She said that this fight is not going to be a brawl, that she's just going to want to beat her up more because of what Savannah has said. So Shields is saying she's going in there to just put it on her. Can she do it? Maybe. I don't know. Here's the problem. Savannah Marshall is very skilled as well. I would edge Claressa being a better, I don't know. It's very hard because they fight so different to say who's better technically. They really do fight extremely different. But the thing that about Shields is she doesn't have a lot of power. She doesn't have a lot of pop in her punches. She's moved down 2 weight classes, fight smaller girls. She hasn't got the knockouts. When she had went down 1 weight class, she hadn't got the knockouts, and she had her hands full with Hannah Gabriel. So a girl like Savannah Marshall packs a punch. She's knocking out girls at her weight class. So I don't know. This was a hard fight for me to judge, because if Claressa cannot do anything to Marshall to get her respect, can Claressa take the damage? Can she take the punches? Because she's going to get hit. Savannah Marshall is definitely going to put paws on her. The only question is, are those punches going to affect Shields? Are they going to break her down, especially now that they're in the pros with no headgear and smaller gloves? Actually, scratch that. I am not quite sure if the females have smaller gloves in the pros or not. I know for the men, you go from 12 ounce to 10 ounce or 8 ounce, depending on what weight class you fight at. I'm not quite sure what gloves the females fight in on the professional. I think they fight in 12 ounce gloves. I said this before, I forgot to look it up, and now I'm realizing that I should have looked it up before. I'm pretty sure the females fight in 12 ounce gloves in the pros. So they may fight in 12 ounce gloves in the amateurs as well. I'm not sure if they're in 14 ounces or 12 ounces. But regardless if the gloves are the same weight or not, you still remove the headgear. Now Savannah, who's a power puncher, can deliver her full blunt force to your head, to your body. Well, to the body's the same, but to your face now, you're feeling it. You're feeling it more. Can Shields deal with that pop? Is Shields going to get reckless because she feels like she said in this statement, that she's going to just go in there to try to beat her up even more? Is she going to have a foolish mindset of where she's going to rush into danger because she wants to prove that it was a fluke loss? that it doesn't matter. It's insignificant, that she's better. So there's a lot of intangibles in this fight that make it very interesting. How is Shields going to handle somebody at the middleweight division? Because I would assume that's where they would fight. Is she going to be able to handle going back up in weight to fight a middleweight fighter? Being that she's been around smaller girls, how is she going to deal with the bigger body, the more weight being pushed around on her? How is she going to deal with not being the bigger person? How is she going to deal with it? I don't know. So what I do know is Katie Taylor said that she's not going to fight Shields. It's too much of a weight gap, and she's not going to do it. So that fight's off the table. So really, Shields is very limited now to who she has to fight. And personally, if she's going to go to MMA, what better way to leave boxing than to beat the only person who beat you in the amateurs? That's how I see it. If she ends up leaving boxing and never fighting Savannah Marshall, unfortunately for Shields, there's going to be a lot of people who put an asterisk by her name and say that she avoided this fighter and Savannah Marshall, especially if Savannah Marshall goes on to continue to knock out girls, continue to look very dominant, and just collect title after title like Shields has done. So there's that thing too. If you're wanting to be known as the greatest to ever do it as a woman, the GOAT, you got to be very careful with how you do this, because if you leave boxing when your biggest rival, so to say, is now pro there currently, while y'all are both in y'all's prime, and you leave without fighting her, then if she goes on to do what you did or more than you did, then you lose that accolade of even being able to call yourself the GOAT, because somebody in your same era outdid you. I'm not saying Savannah Marshall could outdo her. I'm just saying that Shields needs to be very conscious of this. And I think she would be very foolish not to get in there and beat Savannah Marshall if she can beat her before she leaves to go to MMA. Because once she goes over to MMA, I would gather that the money's going to be better for her, especially if she can get into the UFC, and she probably won't come back to boxing. More than likely. I mean, when you look at women's MMA versus men MMA, it's the exact opposite of how things are in boxing. In boxing, the men make all the money, the women don't make nearly as much. In MMA, the females make all the money, and in boxing, they don't make as much. Amanda Nunes is making way more money than Shields. Holly Holmes, Ronda Rousey, she's really the pioneer that blew it up for the UFC as Ronda Rousey. I mean, you had Gina Carano, you had Cyborg. They're really the two women that, in my opinion, blew up female MMA. But as far as the UFC goes, I would say the money there for the women started with Ronda, and it just continued to get better. So, again, if Shields goes to MMA, especially UFC, I find it hard to believe that she would come back to boxing because the money is so much better there for the females. So, again, if she wants to be known as the GOAT, you need to beat your rival before you leave, in my opinion, because I know how people are and I know how people talk, and they're going to say that you evaded fighting this person, that you didn't want it, so you left and you took on another sport when you should have fought somebody in your own sport first. That's just some food for thought for Claressa if she ever sees my channel or this video. But if I'm going to say who I edge in that fight, I really can't say it. I mean, it all depends on what Shields can do. I would say at face value, seeing what I've seen from Savannah, I would actually lean in her favor. At middleweight, I think I lean in Savannah Marshall's favor. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Shields, but I think that power is just going to be too much for her. I think it is. And if it's not, I'll be wrong, and I'll be the first to commend Claressa in winning. I haven't thought any of these females could beat her. I thought her fight with Hannah Gabriel was very close. And I believe it was Medusa was also... No, Medusa was Katie Taylor. I'm sorry. I thought Medusa beat Katie Taylor, but that's irrelevant to this talk. My bad about that, guys. But yeah, the Hannah Gabriel fight was a very tough fight. And I I don't know. I really don't know because Hannah's power really is what made it more of a tougher fight for Shields. And I think Savannah Marshall's just a lot more powerful. So I've seen the chink in the armor, and it's just a question of how tough is Shields? Will she push through it? Will she maul like she mauls? Will she come forward and do it? I truthfully do not know, but I would like to see the fight, and I think that is the real fight to make. I know some other people have talked about her fighting McCaskill. I don't really care about that fight, to be honest with you. I really don't care about the McCaskill fight because it's just where are they going to fight at? What weight class? I think the Savannah Marshall is a much better fight. And again, it gets her back up there at middleweight to her natural weight. And she can right the only wrong that you could say. She could erase the only blemish that's on her record. Bottom line. So it's the perfect thing to do. To me, it's the fight that makes the most sense. Then you go up there, you test out the waters in an MMA, and if you're successful, then you take it all the way up to Amanda Nunes, because I can guarantee you it isn't going to take Shields a lot of fights to be thrown in there in the deep waters. It's not going to take a lot of fights for her to be in this PFL for Dana White to take notice and want to nab her up. I mean, Dana will throw money to get people out of contracts and bring them over. And again, for the women, I think that's her biggest paycheck. So that's how I see it going. Shields, I would like to see you, if you're going to leave boxing, go out on beating Savannah Marshall if you can beat her, and then go segue into, MMA. Look good in this tournament. If you look good enough, Dana will pick you up and bring you into the UFC. And then I can guarantee you're not going to have but a fight or two before you're going to get thrown in there with Nunes. It'll be very quickly. They'll put you in there with Nunes. And then we're really going to see who the best fighter is, because Nunes can crack as well. I'm not saying she could beat Shields. I don't know. I really don't know, because it's a whole different. It depends on how good Claressa can wrestle, because if Nunes wants to take her down and doesn't want to stand with her because Shields is outboxing her too bad, then I don't know if she could stop it. So we need to see how she looks. But again, to come back full circle to where I began, her fight needs to be made with Savannah Marshall. That is the best fight, in my opinion, for her. And it's the most meaningful fight in building her legacy, in my opinion. And that's assuming that Savannah Marshall wins her next fight, because if she loses her next fight, then it kind of loses the appeal. So let me know what y'all think in the comment section. I know this video was long. I know I rambled a good bit, but I just want to talk about the situation and speak on Shields for a moment. Because I really do feel like the female fighters, they need to get a lot more support than they get. I mean, they train hard. They get out there. They perform. They need to be put on more bigger cards. I was talking with Serafina on H Money's channel, and I agree with what she said. They need to get these women on, if not the co-main event, the fight right before the co-main event, when all eyes will be on them, so people can start showing interest and they'll have more of a spotlight shined on them. They really need to start getting put on these bigger cards. I know Eddie Hearn does it with Katie Taylor, but there's more fighters than Katie Taylor. So, again, I think this is a good fight. I want to see it happen. I hope Shields isn't capping, and she's really about that smoke with Savannah Marshall, because it'll be a great fight, win, lose, or draw, for whoever wins, lose, or gets the draw. Again, let me know what y'all think in the comment section.